I spoke a short time ago with the Minister for Emergency Management, Murray Watt.
Look, this investment that we've announced today with Tanya Plibersek is the next step in the Albanese government's plan to make sure that we're much better prepared as a country for future natural disasters. We've obviously overhauled our emergency management arrangements at a national level and made lots of new investments in this space. And what today's announcement is about the Bureau of Meteorology taking over the ownership of a large proportion of flood gauges in the country that are currently owned and maintained by state and local governments. But many times they just don't have the resources to be able to do the upgrade work, which sees them fall into disrepair. And what it actually ends up meaning is that people aren't getting the warnings they need about floods as they are approaching. I've certainly found that myself when I've been in regional communities after floods. People say they don't get the warning they need. In terms of why Queensland being a priority, that is based on the advice of the Bureau of Meteorology. Of course, Queensland is the most disaster-prone state in the nation, and the advice from the Bureau is that the highest flood risk catchments, generally speaking, are in Queensland. And that makes sense when you think about the fact that it's the most decentralised state. So each of the big provincial cities in Queensland has large population bases, high flood risk, and we've also been able to reach a cost-sharing arrangement with the Queensland government, which we haven't yet got with the other states. But money is in the budget to expand this program across every state, and it's certainly our intention to make sure that flood gauges in each state in high-risk environments can be upgraded over the next few years.
And just to pick up on a few of the points you made there, the first and foremost, it's not just the upgrade, it's that consolidation you're talking about as well. So the Bureau of Meteorology will take over these gauges, is that right? Because previously we've had dozens of entities running hundreds, if not thousands of flood gauges across the states. That's been one of the major problems, isn't it? You needed to consolidate the handling of all that.
Exactly, Kieran. And look, really back to about 2015, there's been inquiry after floods in our country that have recommended that the Commonwealth Government take responsibility for ownership, maintaining and upgrading our flood gauge network. But unfortunately, the Coalition ignored every one of those recommendations, and it's now fallen to us to pick up the job, take responsibility and get this done. You're right. The situation we have in the country at the moment is there are literally dozens of councils, state governments, territory governments, others who own and maintain flood gauges, and it's the Bureau of Meteorology who relies on getting that information in so it can then get that information out to people. So by consolidating that under the Bureau of Meteorology's ownership, we'll be able to do a much better job of analysing that information and getting it out to first responders and Australians much more quickly than we have in the past.
The Queensland Government, you mentioned, has agreed to a cost-sharing arrangement for the ongoing maintenance and care of those gauges so they don't run into disrepair. Where are the talks with the other states at?
Well, those discussions have begun, Kieran, and obviously they're more advanced in some states than others. It's worth noting as well that just last year in August, we also allocated $15 million for flood gauge improvements in New South Wales because, of course, some of the floods we'd seen there, both in northern New South Wales, the Hawkesbury-Nepean area and elsewhere, the flood gauge network had been a problem there. So there is money already allocated to New South Wales to begin the job there, but we're very keen to reach similar arrangements with each of the states and territories because, as I say, there's money in this budget to improve flood gauges in high-risk catchments in every single state, and it's our intention to get on with the job and get that work happening as quickly as we can.
One of the big priorities must be the New South Wales Northern Rivers, given recent events there and just how flood-prone that place is. And I know you've, both in opposition and government, spent a great deal of time there. It's not any sort of great news to you, but that must be very high on your priority list to get that all sorted.
Absolutely. I mean, every single state and territory in the country has high-risk catchments, but obviously New South Wales has a substantial number, being a big state with a lot of flooding that occurs. Northern New South Wales, whether it be the Tweed, the Richmond, the Clarence, all of those river systems are very high priority catchments, and we're keen to reach a similar agreement with New South Wales as quickly as we possibly can. As I say, we have allocated some money, about $15 million, to New South Wales to start work there already. And a couple of months ago, you may have seen I was back in Lismore to announce tens of millions of dollars for things like drainage, upgrades and improvements, which is all part of making sure that that water can disperse quickly. But of course, we need to have those flood gauges working properly so that people know what's coming down the line.
Indeed, both, as you said, the residents and the emergency services. Let's look at a couple of other issues before you go. News poll out today, no budget bounce for the government, in fact, down a little. Is that a bit of a concern?
No, I'm not particularly concerned about that, Kieran. I mean, I think, it always takes time for us to get out there and inform people what's in the budget. Even the discussion we've had this morning about flood gauges, that was one of many, many things that was in the budget that didn't get ventilated last week. And I'm confident that there's a whole lot in that budget that will really assist Middle Australia with the cost of living pressures that they're facing. Things like the improvements to bulk billing. Middle Australia goes to the doctor. This will make it easier for people to get a cheaper GP appointment. There's cheaper medicines coming online from the 1st of July as well, along with cheaper childcare. And of course, we've taken a lot of action to relieve the energy costs that people kept seeing happen year after year under the former government. So I'm confident that as everyone wraps their heads around what's in the budget, people will start seeing that it's making a difference. And it's up to me and my colleagues to get out there and advertise it as widely as we can.
And your reference there to Middle Australia and the benefits, the Prime Minister's done the same today, the Treasurer too, wanting to highlight the benefits for Middle Australia. Should that have been a bigger focus on budget night?
Oh, look, I saw a lot of the coverage on budget night of the interviews that the Treasurer, the Prime Minister, Katie Gallagher and others were doing, and I think they did make a lot of that. But of course we also made sure that there was support in the budget for the most vulnerable in our community, as I think we should. So I think it's struck the right balance between helping out those who are vulnerable in our community and need real assistance from government, while also taking a lot of pressure off Middle Australia and those cost of living pressures as well.
Just finally, some mixed messages from the government on Peter Dutton's plan to allow job seeker recipients to work more and earn more before they lose their benefits. Is this an idea with merit? Should the government take it up?
Oh, look, we'll always look at any suggestion that people have got to make, but the reality is that a substantial proportion of people who are on job seeker aren't working the hours that they're allowed to at the moment as well. So our first priority is to try to help people who are unemployed and aren't working into jobs. Obviously, there's lots of employers out there screaming for workers, and what we want to do is do a better job of getting those people into work and providing them with the assistance that they need. But if anyone wants to make a suggestion about changes that can be made, of course, we'll always look at them.
Minister for Emergency Management, Murray Watt, thanks for your time as always.
Thanks, Kieran.